Welcome to the Evolution of Mom. We are your hosts, Amy and Charisse. We hope you enjoyed our last episode on physical health. Today, we want to dive a little bit more into mental health because health is so much more than just the physical body. As in mental health, we tend to disconnect. We talked a little bit about it last week in terms of like mind and body connection and how when there's pain, we tend to disconnect. And I think part of bringing back that reconnection is actually, I got sun in my eyes.
I see that. It looks good.
How's the lighting? Part of bringing back that connection is discovering what's going on in the mental body.
Yes, big time. And I think it becomes really easy to separate the two. I think that's a part of our survival mode. Right? Like with me, for example, I was so in my physical body, I never thought to address my mental health when it came to what I was going through in terms of helping me heal. And now that I have what I would like to think my physical health under control, I'm really having to work through the mental health that has come along with that and the leaning out of the sun. We need blinds in the future, people. But coming out of my physical health now and into the mental health, I'm starting to look back and realizing how much it affected my mental health without me even knowing.
And it's a primal instinct of the body, right? We go back when we're in fight or flight mode. That is our natural predatory mode, right? That was what kept us safe when we were cavemen and there was a saber tooth after us. It shuts off our mind so we don't know, like we don't have to think, oh, I can't run right now. We're just like, I got to get away from this predator. It shuts down our digestion. It shuts down so many different things. And we just kind of run on autopilot. And our bodies, like we can get very much because there's no longer a threat of a saber-toothed tiger. Our minds actually make up bigger threats for us now. And so we end up stuck in this survival mode with not really real threats. Like they're real threats, but we become disconnected and we run our lives on autopilot. I know for so many years, I had a hard time even remembering like stuff that happened a couple days ago because I was almost so disassociated from where I was because I was at such a point of struggle mentally.
Our bodies treat stress nowadays like they would have when the predator was chasing us. So it is not a life or death situation, typically in your average day, but your body treats it like it is. So your body is still responding to that stress like you need to be in survival mode. That's why it affects us so much physically, because all those other components that aren't core to our life in that moment shut down and slow down. And as women, especially, we learn to live in this space. And I know that that is one of our biggest goals, is to help women realize that they don't have to live in survival mode, to recognize that they're there and how to move out of it, because it is such a mental game.
It is, absolutely. I mean, my biggest journey even to start in mental health was shortly after my first son was born, when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. And it took 10 months after my first son was born before I was able to even admit that something was like, that I was struggling. And I think that's one of the most important things with mental health, is that we don't ask for help. And it takes us so long to even reach out because we don't really know. Like, and I don't really feel like I understood depression per se until I felt that depression, this heaviness, this weight that was on me. And I got to a point where I was so just overwhelmed and stressed and lonely that I went to a dark place. I went to a very dark place, and there wasn't a whole lot of light in my world. And I struggled with that. And then my physical body ended up being affected from it. And as a therapist, shortly after I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, my first inclination, my teaching is around helping the physical body. So I know how to heal the physical body. So I was having these like mental thoughts that really created pain, emotional pain in my body. But I went to physical to start it. And physical helped a lot because it provided dopamine responses and like the feel good hormones, and it built my confidence. But I struggled at the beginning because mentally I was not in a good place. And so I was almost doing it to punish my body. And I know we've talked about that before. But it ended up turning into a point where I started having to look at it as a space of loving and treating my body and giving it what it needs and celebrating my small wins, just little after little after little.
So important.
And when I started celebrating those small wins and stopped paying attention to everybody else at the gym, that's where I started to build my confidence. And that's where my mental state started to turn around. And it was such an interesting point because it was like the whole start of my mental health journey, where I started to recognize that you don't really have anything with mental health. It's hard for people to understand, even though I think we all struggle in varying degrees, because they can't see anything physically wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something on the inside that like is a struggle.
And that's traumatic on its own.
It is. And most of us suffer in silence. And that silence, that can be so detrimental.
Because it's so lonely.
Yeah.
Right? It is so lonely to suffer in silence. But when we talk out on it, or even just share what we're going through, it is so amazing how the person you're sharing that with is going to go, me too. I've absolutely experienced this in this way. Like you said, it's all different for everyone. There's varying degrees of what it is, but it's just so amazing how it all comes together and affects each other, right? So now you're exercising, it increases your dopamine, right? You're celebrating your wins, that increases your dopamine. You're, taking action, that also increases your happy hormones, which is going to help your mental state, right? But there's so many other components to it, but it's just so amazing how the mental affects the physical affects the mental, because it's a struggle to start doing those physical things because inflammation is extremely prevalent in your body when you're dealing with high stress hormones. And so it makes it hard to move. It's almost like the chicken and the egg sometimes, where you're trying to find which one started where, because if you're not physically moving, it's affecting your mental health. If you're not, mentally okay, then it's affecting your physical health. It's amazing. It's all of these different layers. And it's crazy that we talked about this last time, to start scratching those layers off. And when it comes to mental health, your brain is so incredible at 1, keeping you safe, 2, keeping you happy, and 3, being super protective of what's coming in and out of there. But you can also train your brain in the wrong way. So our brains are sponges. If you tell your brain that you're excited about something or you're focused on something, it's going to show you those things all the time. So if it thinks you're happy about seeing negative things, it's going to show you negative things. If you're happy about or excited about seeing happy things, it's going to show you those things. There's both going on all the time. There is this super powerful part of your brain called your reticular activating system. And it works for you in that way. For example, when I was engaged, I had never seen so many wedding shows on TV ever. It's like the world knew that I was getting married, and here's all the wedding shows. And then I was pregnant. Oh my goodness, could you believe all of these baby shows on TV now all of a sudden? And then we were buying a house. Look at all of these homeowner shows now. It's like the TV is tailoring to my life. When in reality, those shows were all already there. They've all been there all the time.
It's basically like the Facebook advertisements.
Yes.
Right? That you say something out loud and then all of a sudden it pops up.
That's right. It's exactly like that. So if you choose, Ed Milet gave this really good example. If you go into a grocery store and you think that people are terrible, they're all jerks, you're going to see someone being inconsiderate. if you go into a grocery store thinking that people are genuinely good and that there is good in this world, you're going to see someone giving up their cart for someone. You're going to see someone opening the door for someone or letting someone pass. It's all always there. It's what you're training your brain to look for. And so it's very important what we feed our mind. We need to train it to look for the things that are going to benefit us and to help us. And, sometimes it's not things that we understand yet. And this is, I have a very science brain. I like anatomy and physiology. And this is where the connection came for me, that it mattered what I was feeding my mind to my health. Because if my stress hormones are super high, I can't sleep. If I can't sleep, my melatonin can't combat my cortisol and my oxytocin. If I'm not connecting to people in a healthy way, it can't combat my cortisol and increases my sleep. It's this crazy feedback loop that happens, and you just kind of have to get into it. You just kind of have to disrupt that feedback loop, however it is, and then start getting, like we talked about last time, to the flame, to the root cause. And that's the best way to do it, is just to kind of interrupt that loop and go see what works.
Absolutely. Like that's what I found, because when you're in that mental state, you can spiral and you're just stuck, and you see all in your thought is negative thought, and you just get stuck in that endless loop. And one of those biggest shifts for me has been personal development. And I mean, it was everybody's I heard people start talking about personal development, but I had no idea what it was. And it's such an amazing thing when you pick up a book that talks about mindset. You listen to a podcast that talks about mindset. When you start to take in information that gives you that power back, because same thing, you can get stuck in that victim mindset where you're just stuck, mentally you're oh, maybe this is just me. Maybe I can't be happy. Maybe I am just blah.
And the whys. It gets you into that. Why is this always happening to me?
Yeah.
Why me?
Yeah.
Why,
Yeah. So that personal development, just understanding that we have the power to switch our brains in an instant. I know now that no matter what thought I'm in, I have the power to change that thought. I can take it and go, whoa. Wait a second. Let's change that and become more positive. And that's been huge, right? Because instead of looking at problems, I can now see the solutions. And I go through these, the best way to interrupt my thought pattern is to change my physiology somehow. So whether that's if I'm inside and I'm stuck on the couch and I'm feeling negative, or I haven't got out of bed in a couple days, go outside. Or movement, especially. I love to dance. I dance to Taylor Swift, Shake It Off, when I really need a mindset switch, right? Because I'm just
perfect. Shaking it off.
Totally shake it off, right?
And we know you can't be moody
when you're shaking your booty.
That's right.
I mean, emotions are energy in motion. And so when we suppress things and keep it inside and we hold it inside, it gets stuck and it gets stagnant, and it's got to work its way through, right? It's got to come up and out, and it usually doesn't, is most in an opportune time. And so when I find I'm in that state of negative, uncomfortable feelings, and I'm ugh, yeah, go dance. Or cold dips have been good for me. I know that's crazy, and people
I'm not there yet, friend. I'm not there yet.
Cold dips are actually amazing because it forces you to focus on your body. There's so much science behind it. If you want to go and look into it, or send me a message afterwards and we'll go over it. But it is a state, it changes my mind in an instant, and it's so amazing what it does. Or I'll pick up a book, or I'll listen to a podcast, and just change my mindset. And that's it's such an important tool to be able to have, and it's empowering.
It is, and it's gaining traction for sure. This is more of a common topic now. It's more of a common thing to talk to people about this, but it's still not as common and talked about as it should be. Because believe me, when the first few times personal development was introduced to me, and people were saying, well, what about listening to this? What about this? I'm eye roll. Big eye roll. I'm do you know what I have been through in my life? And I am still mentally great. I am awesome. I'm okay. This and this. And then you start digging into it, and you're oh, Oh, there's that block. Oh, there's this. I went a long time without thinking that my physical trauma didn't affect me mentally. That was a shield and an armor that I was wearing. And it was crap.
Well, anytime your body goes through trauma, like it's going to affect you mentally. And I think that's a piece that's not usually touched on as much, is how much mentally and emotionally you go through when you do hit a trauma.
Mm-hmm. And even like there's traumas that happen to your body that aren't traumas that are seen in a negative way. Look at having a baby. That is an extremely physical event. Growing the baby is extremely physical. You are going through moments, even in early motherhood to even now, I feel like some days my body isn't my own.
And it's a traumatic event.
It's extremely traumatic. It's not like
you're pushing a baby out a tiny little hole. Like it's traumatic.
It is beautiful. It's incredible. Grateful to have done it. But holy, it's not like it's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. And then you take this little baby home who is completely 100% reliant on you to survive.
Yeah. I remember questioning, am I mentally stable enough to even, like, how am I surviving? Am I own? Am I taking good enough care of myself? Let alone now I've got this little human that is so dependent on me, right? And we've talked about that. But that right there, it's seen as this beautiful thing in life, which it is. But we also definitely need to talk about that it is an extremely physical thing to go through. And there's a reason that it messes up our hormones. Our hormones don't regulate for like a year if we're in prime condition after having a baby. Yeah. There's mental and physical hormone changes that are insane that we just kind of have to roll with as we raise this baby. Mm-hmm. It's not talked about enough.
And it used to be like a community, right? You That's had right. people to support you. And I know for me, like, I had nobody around me to support me. It was just me and this little tiny thing that I knew nothing about. I'm like, he's crying again.
So
his diaper's clean. He just fed and he's crying again. I'm like, use your words. But like, it was just... It was like that culmination of an overwhelm that I didn't talk to, and I didn't know how to address or how to speak to the nurses or the doctors that were checking in, because I didn't really know, right? And it turned into this like heaviness and this darkness. Like I kind of describe it as being stuck in a dark hole, and you're trying to climb out, and you start to climb out, but then you fall back in. And you don't really know, like you can't figure out a way out. It's just this like dark heaviness, and it weighs you down every single day.
And it's a perfect example of when we put that face on that we're fine.
Yeah. And that's it. It's the hardest thing because people look at you from the outside and think that you're fine and you're doing great. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know how to ask for help, and that, like, I can tell you from a space of like having to rely on myself most of my life, I didn't know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
I didn't know who the right people were to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And it's another stigma where we don't want to come off as weak. We don't want to come off as we don't know what we're doing. It happens in all sorts of things. I mean, I know motherhood is a really good example, but how many of us actually knew what we were doing? I wake up every day still not knowing what I'm doing. You just
trying to get going.
Right? You just learn from the day before.
Yep.
Right?
You're like, okay.
Yeah, nailed that. Made a mistake there.
I'll do better next time. Sorry.
And that's all we can do.
Yeah.
But it's just, you got to open up about this stuff. Any kind of suppression is going to lead to some sort of depression. And like you said, it comes out now in inopportune moments and in inopportune ways. It can come out in physical ways. It can come out in outbursts of emotions that you're not actually feeling, but it comes out in anger or in impatience. And it's going to come out some way. Yeah. It's going to attack your body in some way.
It's super, super important to protect your mental health every single day. And I mean, I had to start looking at my environments, who was around me, when I had negative people in my life, I had to start spending less time with them because I just had this, I was already in a tough mental space, and spending time with negative people just suckered me in, right? And just pulled me back down. And so as much as I would try to climb out that dark hole, as soon as you'd spend time with negative people, boom, right back in, right? So protecting your mental space every day is super important, and talking to the right people. I know it's hard to determine who the right people are, but I can tell you if somebody's negative, it's probably not the right people.
Because you're training your brain to show you more people that way, and and you're telling your brain that that's a safe space for you. I'm going to keep coming here because this is comfortable for me, and your brain always wants to keep you safe and comfortable. So it's going to talk you into going to those people and out of going to somewhere else. Well, those people might judge me. Those people are not where I am. They're happy, they're healthy, they're this. This person is miserable, so they're going to understand me, right? It's a huge mental game, but a great piece of advice, and I think we've said this before, is don't take advice from people you wouldn't trade places with. Yeah, exactly. So if you're looking over at the happy, healthy people and thinking they're not going to understand me, come at it from a space of how are they there? Yeah. Or maybe they're just really good at putting on that show. Yeah. And they need help too.
Yeah. So takeaway, I would say ask yourself 3 questions. What can you remove from your life to protect your mental space? What can you add to your life to protect your mental space? So things like self-care, quiet space, things like that. And who can you ask for help? And I know that is hard to try and figure out who. I know, like, I've been there. So, and Amy too, like, our struggle with our mental health has been there. So if you guys feel like reaching out to us, we'd be happy to talk to you. So send us a DM on Instagram or, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's just from a space of, I don't want to feel alone.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into anything you don't want to not get into, but just to have a friend, to have a space of someone to connect with is a beautiful place to be. And having someone help you ask yourself those questions, because, you know, if you've been listening to our show from the beginning, that's what we're really gearing people up for and gearing women up for, is how to ask themselves those questions so they can become self-aware, so they can take charge of their self-care and get out of that survival mode.
Yeah. So as always, don't forget to put yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right. Self-care is selfless. We are so thankful you are here with us. Thank you for listening to our episode on mental health. Next time, we are going to go into soul. What are you doing that feeds your soul? What a beautiful part of health that is. And I'm excited for that one as well. Please feel free to connect with us. We are on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. We go live on Instagram every Friday night. It's very casual. Bevies and
Switching
BS.
to Thursday nights.
Switching to Thursday nights. Thank you. From now on, it will be on Thursday nights because we want you guys to have your Fridays. It's getting real nice out. Yeah. It's getting real nice out, and we want you guys to be outside. So that, and our Facebook community, where we are growing a more intimate space where we can connect with you and Zoom call with you once a month, the last Tuesday of every month. Intimate space. We're going to create a lot of beautiful things there and get to know each other all.
Yeah.
All of each other. Anyway, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
On a different level. We're here for you in that space. We also offer free half-hour calls where we can connect and be a space for you. As always, thank you to the Next Level University crew. We love you. We couldn't be here without you. Thanks for being here. Bye.